Good evening, folks, or morning or afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Deborah Roth here again from Spirited Living with another Inner Goddess Team video for you in my long, now 4+ years series of doing these. And it always, it always amazes me that there are so many goddesses. I've always talked about for years a phrase that one of my teachers used talking about the divine feminine was the 10,000 faces of the goddess. And yeah, there are that many. And I always have fun researching, especially those that I really didn't know that much about. The one that we're looking at this week is Pythia, who is the Greek goddess, who is a Greek goddess who was actually the oracle at Delphi, which was Apollo's, the god Apollo. It was his temple, and there's a really interesting myth around how that came to be, and yet there's not a whole lot known about Pythia. And then after she died, there were the Pythias. So let me back up a minute. So the site of the Delphic Oracle of Apollo's temple in Delphi was, according to mythology, the place that Apollo had a massive battle with the serpent, with a python, actually. Let me see if I can, let's see. Battlefield where Apollo fought the python. When Apollo struck the python, the earth opened up, and in the crack in the earth, Apollo cut off the python's head, and it fell into this gulf when steaming air evaporating from the cleft, and the python fell within there. On top of the monster's rotting body, the sorceress, see if I can pronounce this correctly, Phenemone, which means the prophetic mind, built a temple for Apollo and took the name Pythia from Python, right, as a celebration of this deed. And that later became known as the House of Snakes to acknowledge the Python, the battle of Apollo and the Python, and then as the Delphic Oracle. Now, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, oh, I made a point when I was in Greece in college, so we're talking a long time ago, to visit the Oracle at Delphi. I didn't have any idea about any of this. So there's a little bit of yearning in me to go back, and now that I know the feminine history, the goddess history of this temple of Apollo, makes me all the more curious to get back there. And what made this unusual is that Pythia really changed. She took on the name of Pythia, and she changed the tradition in the Greek religion, where it was only men would take on, mortal men would speak through the voice of the male gods, and women could speak through the voice of the female gods. Pythia was the only one with Apollo's love and grace. He was perfectly happy to have her be his channel. And the way that it worked is that people would enter into, if people had an inquiry, anyone who had an inquiry, she did her divination, she did her thing once a month, and whoever the inquirers were, whoever had a question for her, would enter into the temple and be purified. She was also purified in something called, let me see it was the name of the Castellan Spring that was near the sanctuary. And after that, she would burn laurel leaves. That was one of the traditions that would happen too, and barley meal to call in and appease Apollo. And they were in separate places, so she would go into the inner sanctum and be on top of a tripod that was, according to legend, that was on top of the cleft that was left from this, that these smells, what are they, not smells, purify herself as well. So she was on top of a cleft through which aromas came up from where, from deep within the earth, and it was thought that that was what put her in a trance state. And so the inquirer who came with a question would be in an outer, and I've got an interesting little frieze of what that of an ancient depiction of that. So you can see her on top of her little tripod, and then the inquirer, which were very often usually men, and she had a great deal of influence. She talked with leaders and generals, and they would come with questions, and she would speak in her feminine voice, but she would speak with the wisdom of Apollo, and would foretell the outcome of wars and battles, and actually, again, according to legend, helped to also create and statesmen. So she was working within the political system of Greece at the time, and coming up with ideas of democracy that we still use today. So she was quite powerful, or whoever it was, and because there were a series of Pythias, they were called the Pythias, and after she was purified and they were purified, the inquirers were purified, she would carry out her divination. And there isn't a whole lot. This oracle was indeed a person speaking in the voice of Apollo, and she was considered a goddess because she was speaking, or Apollo was speaking through her. But there isn't a whole lot known about the actual Pythias themselves, the women who first apparently had to be virgins, and then it evolved into, and heard different versions of this, or read different versions of this, evolved into that no longer virgins because one of them was raped, which is, unfortunately, you see that a lot in Greek mythology, very patriarchal. But then the Pythias in later times became women who were over 50, who came from good families, and were local. They didn't come from afar. They were someone who lived nearby in Delphi. The word Pythia actually means snake, and that's where the Python, where the Pythia came from. And for all that we're not really told about who these Pythias were, they are mentioned so many times by all the big Greek writers, Sophocles and Euripides and Aeschylus. All of them refer to them, but only in their role as the Delphic Oracle, not as the women that they came from. Once they moved into and became the Delphic Oracle, they obviously gave up their lives and stayed in the temple. So let me see if there's anything else I want to tell you about her. Oh, she was also the goddess of necromancy, which was speaking with the dead and getting information from the dead. Not sure how useful that one necessarily is nowadays, but if you've watched any of my Inner Goddess Team videos, that one of the reasons I do this is because I just feel passionately that all of these archetypes of the divine feminine, of these feminist archetypes, really represent qualities that we all carry within us, whether we're male or female. And so I'm always looking for, okay, if that's the case, then how do we draw on that wisdom? How do we draw on that archetype as modern women and men today? And so, yes, I can very easily see how divination is probably her biggest connection with us. So, anytime that you want to pull a tarot card or a goddess card or do the I Ching, or any time where you want to really access your own deep intuition, calling on Pythia is a great thing to do. The necromancy part, I'm not so sure, because one of the things that I was reading about is that in true necromancy, connecting with the dead, is that the living person, it's always a living person that's making the entreaty, the inquiry, and calling up, you know, an ancestor or someone who's recently died. And the living person has to be willing to die a little bit, not quite sure what that means, and also reanimate the person, the deceased loved one that they're calling on. So you can see why I brought this up now. We're still within a week after Samhain, the Day of the Dead, Halloween. It's a perfect, the whole divination energy and the whole energy of connecting the living and the dead is very much a part of this season. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, but so I just invite you to play with this energy and learn a little bit more about her. And I'll sing for you. I do actually have one chant that refers to snakes. And snakes in all kinds of feminist mythology represent the divine feminine. They shed their skin like we shed our blood each month. They've been kind of twisted around by the patriarchy to be evil, you know, like the snake in the Garden of Eden. This snake, Pythia from the Python, who was defeated by Apollo, is obviously embodying the positive aspects of snake energy. So this is my favorite snaky chant. So just kind of sit back and take it in. And if you've got other ones, let me know. I always forget to say that. Definitely like this if you're watching, you know, when you watch it on YouTube, it goes up on YouTube usually like Wednesday or Thursday night. And then, yeah, I'd love to hear your experiences with your own divination and calling on Pythia. Okay, now settle in and let me sing this snaky chant for you. Sacred women circle round, she calls us to remember. She comes to us within our dreams and holds us close and tender. Women chanting, snaking round, she works her magic powers, teaching us to shed our skins to weave this sacred hour. So listen to that and keep playing it over and over and sing it a couple times and think about how you want to shed what you need to let go of. This is the time of year for doing that so that you can make room for whatever new skin you want to bring in. What magic, what wisdom do you want to welcome into your life right now? Thanks so much for joining, and let me know your experience with Pythia.